Jager, everyone.
Jager.
Welcome to minute 21 of our podcast, Awake, the life of Yogananda minute by minute. And today we've got a special guest, Stewart. Hello, Stewart.
Hiya.
Stewart is joining us from Scotland. But before we introduce him, Mike, how was energization that you would have had just now because you're in LA?
It's too early in the morning. I did energization yesterday. I didn't do it this morning.
That's good.
Guilty.
That's good. Well, it's within 24 hours, right? So that's the minimum prescription.
That is correct. Yes.
Chris?
Good question. I'm hoping for a different question. No, I didn't do my energization technique this morning. Did you get meditation in?
I warned you. Like every time I host, I'm going to ask you this question. Yeah, you're still.
It's been a while since you've done it. You lulled me into a false sense of security.
And Stewart can tell us the art of doing that with students, because you're a teacher, aren't you, Stewart?
Yeah. So I did do my energization.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. I didn't want to put you on the spot. That's why I didn't ask you. It's a bit of A star.
That's okay.
Stewart, tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm in Scotland. I'm a dad of one, soon to be two, and I'm a guitar teacher in high schools throughout the week, and I've done that for nearly 10 years now, I think. Yeah.
You're in Scotland, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yes. Is it in some lovely picturesque? Have you opened the window? Is there mountains or anything like that?
No.
Oh, no.
In Glasgow.
Oh gosh. Mountains of concrete.
Yeah, but my wife's from the Highlands, so when we go up there, we get to see all the mountains.
Oh, very good. Guruji says, as in his autobiography, Highlands is one of the most picturesque locations in the world, if I remember correctly. Is that right? I'd highly recommend it. So speaking of Guruji, Stewart, how did you meet Guruji?
Well, I started getting into sort of spiritual stuff and reading books, and I listened and watched a lot of Ram Dass stuff. And I read I read Be Here Now, and then in the suggested reading I had Autobiography of a Yogi, and I thought, well, I want to know all about yogis, so I read that. But I remember when I was reading Ram Dass, he was talking about his guru. He went to India, and I was like, I'm never going to be able to do that. Like, what am I going to do? And then also I read the autobiography, and then it mentioned about Kriya Yoga, and I was like, I need to learn that. And then I applied for the lessons, and that was it. Yeah, I realised you don't need to go to India.
Very nice. That's a unique way into it. When did you watch Awake, and how was it for you?
I think I watched it after I finished reading Autobiography of a Yogi. I became aware of it whilst reading, but I thought, no, I don't want to watch it until after. And yeah, I guess at the time it made it all more real, and seeing Yogananda on film was very powerful, and just getting the sort of story in a kind of cinematic way as opposed to in the book. Obviously it's portrayed a wee bit differently.
Yeah, that's a very good point you raised of watching it after reading the autobiography, because I always tell my family members then read the autobiography before you watch it, but they don't listen to my advice, and they just do it anyway. But yeah, let's talk about minute 21, unless anyone's got any more burning questions for Stewart. Mike, Chris? No.
Are you,
go on.
You've got beautiful, for viewers that are watching, you can see Stewart behind him. There's beautiful pictures. One, of course, is of Yogananda. Is this going to be something that maybe your partner or your son and daughter, I think, is it that you want them to be a part of? Do you think at this early stage of your journey, do you think that you'll include them in the teachings?
Yeah, well, of course I would like that. So, but it's not really in my hands. So I just follow the teachings, try and do my best, but I don't try and usher anyone to it. And my son, he's obviously going to become more aware, he'll see pictures, perhaps see me meditating and things, and if he's drawn to that, that's great. If not, maybe it took me 33 years, so you just don't know. But yeah, of course, you want everyone in the world to know, but you can't.
Yeah,
So.
I think that's a beautiful thing about our path and our journey with Master. There's no, preaching. There's no coercion. There's none of that, and there's no promotion of that style of worship, is there? Which is, I think, is one of the unique things about our path. It's so inclusive. Like if your son sees you meditate, I mean, he can sit with you. When he's old enough, he'll sit with you and see, oh, what's Dad doing? Let me sit with him, and that'll be a beautiful moment for you, Stewart, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're going to kind of touch on it in this minute. The influence of the parent on the sibling. Really, hence the question.
Very good, Chris. And that's a beautiful segue into let's introduce the minute. So the minute discusses. So it starts with kind of Brother Chidananda announces that Yogananda, Mukunda's at the time, Mukunda Lal Ghosh, his mother has passed away. That message was received, and then we have Mukunda. And I'm going to refer to Mukunda because we're going to focus this minute on Mukunda as a child, not as Yogananda, the guru and the avatar, even though he may have, it must have been his Leela. But we'll talk about Mukunda as a child before his initiation and all that kind of stuff. So Mukunda questions the purpose of all of this, of his life, etc. And then he talks about how his mother's love has been the savior in his childhood. So this happened when he was 11. And then we have his mother giving him a kind of a farewell, a kind of final goodbye. And this obviously would have been received through intuition, as it were. And then we take the opportunity to delve into that minute, really. Let's do that straight away. So Mukunda Lal Ghosh, let's talk about the child Mukunda and who he was. And we're going to give some examples of that for listeners that have perhaps already read the autobiography of Yogi. But let's think about, for example, some stories that aren't in the autobiography of Yogi that are in other biographies. So Chris, do you want to read the first card in the let's get inside the psyche?
Yes, so happy to read this. At the same time, he needed to learn firsthand about the dangers of the occult. In the one instance, he reportedly coaxed a spirit to enter his hypnotized sister, Tamu, and to use her voice to reveal the location of a stolen object. It worked, only the spirit didn't want to leave. It took some hard negotiating on Mukunda's part. His trump card was brandishing a photo of Lahiri Mahashaya, and a lot of effort to bring Thamu back to consciousness in full strength.
So this is a story that's in some of the other biographies of Yogananda. So it's a beautiful story about him experimenting with occult practices, hypnosis, and bringing spirits into his siblings, isn't it? But this is really about him experimenting. So, he's becoming aware of his powers, which were obviously, even at that age, to put someone in hypnosis, summon spirits. That's pretty powerful, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, it's a bit scary as well, right? I think he mentions it, and it's mentioned in the autobiography of a yogi as well, that story.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he also mentions there that hypnosis in general is not something that we should be trying or that is useful on the spiritual path. But he had a strong will, and as a kid, this will wasn't directed initially, at least, towards God and serving a higher purpose, but little things like, I don't know what they were fighting about, but it was basically child's play, and then you're a child and you play with an avatar who is omnipotent. So he was basically showing off his power, and I'm guessing he shared it in his autobiography to show us that there are those things. They're not just theory or something. They actually exist, and we should be aware of them.
Chris?
Yeah, there was just a tale on the back of what Mike was saying when he was playing with his sister. You know, he was, I think, one instance in the autobiography of a yogi where he was trying to heal a boil that he said was going to appear, and the sister, of course, called him out and said, "Oh, you know, you're talking rubbish," and he retorted back and used his words, the power of his word of speech, and ended up. I think the story is giving his sister a boil, right? And his mother really came in to say, you know, you got to be really careful. You need to be careful about how you use your words. And when I read that, I remember thinking to myself, you know, in the Bible, first there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word, or something to that effect. And it always made me think, like, what does that mean? And to some effect here, you see Mukunda's use of speech to manifest reality as God did in a sense. And it's just incredible. Reading these stories is just really insightful. And Guruji does balance them out, and his teachings are very straight, very focused on God, and everything else is secondary. It isn't necessary. You can go off on the wrong path. It can be used in the wrong way. So yeah, it's a really interesting excerpt. And you could probably talk about this for a whole hour.
No, we won't. We've got lots to discuss. Stewart, tell us your experiences of such stories.
Yeah, when I read Mejta, the story in there, when he's doing that to his brother, and then his father eventually says, no, stop doing that completely, because it's like it was weakening in his brother as well. And he does mention that, he says, don't do these things, which, yeah, there's a teaching in there as well. So I'm sure Guruji would have known Mejta, the book was going to come out, and all the content anyway, so anything that's happened, and he knew, so even though he didn't write it directly. So yeah, that's that stuff.
Did you when did you read the Mejta? That's an interesting one to read, seeing as you're very new into your journey.
Oh, I read that, I don't know, earlier this year, or
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. It's interesting also with the theory of hypnosis, because it's part of the National Health Service now. You can get hypnosis for various like psychological ailments and other things like that, isn't it? Now let's talk about some other side, another facet of Yogananda. Mike, do you want to read the other card on that psyche card?
Yep. The green part as well?
No, all of it, yeah.
Yeah. Mukunda was an exception, even in his family. According to Brother Sananda, when others were indulging the flesh of a bird, Mukunda ate rice and vegetables in silence and would later scold his brother for being complicit in the sin of killing helpless creatures.
Stop there before we move on. We'll get you to read the next bit in a second. But vegetarianism there, it's very subtle, isn't it? The insistence of vegetarianism in self-realization fellowship. But even in this instance, as a child, he was unique amongst his family there. So he'd tell his siblings off for doing, for eating flesh of birds and animals. Do you guys have experience of that, Chris? Perhaps you've probably, are you one of the few vegetarians in your family?
Yes. In short, yes. Yeah, in Ireland, it's not commonplace, and thankfully, being in London 8 years and seeing the change there, you can see the change happening all across the UK, and it's even reaching Northern Ireland, which is great. And I think naturally, as we evolve, we're seeing subtle vibrations increasing our awareness to the sluggishness and the effect on the body and the mental and emotional states. And I think it's slowly moving through that stage. So I like to, just to hitch on your point there, Priyank, I do like the, I suppose, lack of concrete, you must do this type of speech in SRF, because Yogananda focuses on doing the work in meditation and doing the work with Kriya Yoga. And naturally, the byproduct is these things might fall away. You know, your desire to eat the flesh of animals and things like this. So it's kind of work, unnecessary work to try to convince somebody and beat them over the head with it. You know, just do the work yourself in meditation, you know, increase your vibration. Things might change in due course.
Yeah, I remember when I was in my youth, I used to be like a really pro-vegetarianism, and I used to like really get into lots of debates with people, and they were never, it was never a good place to be in, even if like they were convinced there's just a bad energy there.
Yeah, it's hard to like the number one thing you hear is, but I love meat so much. I could never stop eating meat. That's the number one thing. But I love it. I could never give it up. And yeah, you're not winning the arguments. So it's futile.
Unless anyone's got any further points about that. Mike, do you want to read the rest of that card?
Yeah. His commitment to ahimsa was not entirely Gandhian, however. His righteous willingness to stand up for the principle was something muscular. A bully at the school he briefly attended in Chittagong intimidated, humiliated, and occasionally beat up on smaller lads. Mukunda was outraged and one day challenged the bully to a fight. As reported in Majda, his antagonist pounced. The combatants scuffled. The bully lifted Mukunda off the ground and threw him down in the thud. He was poised to deliver a decisive blow when Mukunda wrapped his neck in an arm lock. He held on tightly as the bully maneuvered into position and repeatedly slammed Mukunda's head on the ground. Despite his bloody skull, Mukunda held the neck grip until finally the bully was red-faced and gasping for air. Mukunda would not let him go until he promised never to pick on others again.
What do you think, Mike?
Again, like you are like in a school fight, fighting an avatar. This guy was probably twice his size and like probably like punched him like 10 times and thought, what's going on? Why is he not fainting already? Hopefully this guy learned a lesson there for his life. So like he is a guru at the end of the day. So maybe this guy even became his disciple later on or something. But you gotta admire like the lack of fear, the strength, and the willpower that he had. Just putting him in an arm lock, no matter what he does, he will give up eventually.
Yeah, Stuart, you'll probably remember that story, no doubt, from Majda. That's one of the more like surprising ones, isn't it? What were your thoughts when you read it?
Yeah, well, that is surprising. Yeah, I kind of was like, what's the meaning behind this? I guess he was just being an example, or even though it wasn't ahimsa, so to speak, it was there was a bigger purpose, like a bigger picture to it. So yeah, I thought it was interesting. But there are teachings about that. Like, it doesn't mean if someone's going to like come at you, you've just to stand there and you need to like support someone or something like that if they're in trouble. So yeah, it was interesting, but I kind of took that from it.
The stories, the reason I've brought these other stories out is because I wanted to get inside our listeners' minds that Mukunda at that time, these are very normal kind of stories. So like, we see him devastated by his mother's passing, but if you look at his like persona, it's very normal. So you would be, obviously, if your mother passed away at that age, then you would obviously be very distraught, just as Mukunda was. Perhaps you wouldn't have that intuitional awareness of her saying goodbye and those kinds of things, but that's kind of the state of like the development of Mukunda's growth at that age. But let's talk about now just slightly, let's go on slightly from that age of 11. Stewart, would you want to read out that passage that talks about him when he's a little bit older? And this now he's now a bit more established in his zeal for spiritual striving and meditation and organizing organizing meditators and giving instruction, perhaps. So Stuart, do you want to read that passage out that I found?
Yeah, sure. Self-realization work started in a little hut in India for 25 cents a month as rent. Father used to call me back every night. Stay in the day, but don't stay at night. But I said, in this little hive there is honey, and the bees will be coming. So when our honey of God gathered in that little hive, bees of devotees began to come from far and near. That one-room hut, essentially, Yogananda's first ashram, was acquired in 1908, when Mukunda was 15, because the Ghosh home was too glamorous for satsangs. Located for the group by a boy named Pulin, who would go on to be a Swami, the small thatched roof structure with adobe walls was located a couple of kilometres east of Garpa Road. Mukunda named it Sadhana Mandir. A mandir is usually translated as temple. It was, therefore, a temple devoted to spiritual practice. The young yogis met there regularly. Mukunda led them in scripture reading, kirtan chanting, and meditation. He seemed to have made the place his personal responsibility. In his memoir, Satyananda wrote that Mukunda devoted an extraordinary amount of time and energy to fixing up the ashram, sometimes labouring through the night. Once, when cementing the floor, his hands bled. When he pulled all-nighters, his sister Tamu, then around 7, would let him into their home in the morning before their elders wakened.
That's a really, really powerful image, isn't it? Yogananda as a child setting up, establishing little schools for yoga, and in that little school, they actually had libraries, and he'd go to various wealthy people's houses and say, "Can I borrow that book?" And any book on yoga or spirituality, he'd take and they'd put it into that library. Stuart, what did you think of that little bit of info?
Yeah, when I read that, I thought just that sort of divine will was already flowing through him, even then. And the magnetism he had as a child, all these people following him, and he's leading them in kirtan and meditation and doing all these things. It was obviously, well, we know he was already liberated before and he's an avatar. But it's just interesting because we're taught that the avatars take on illusion too. It's just trying to see how much of that from an early age, or do they know a wee bit?
Mike?
Yeah, I mean, when you hear him, his inner monologues in the autobiography of a yogi, you think of him as this very relatable person that is young, growing up in India. But then at the same time, he's so modest. He's even at this time, he had this vision of, I got to do something for Divine Mother. I got to make this place a spiritual place. I got to have all the people around me seek God. I got to make my whole life about God. Like, he knew this from the beginning, but I feel like when he describes himself, he's very modest. And half the things that he did, he doesn't even mention in his autobiography, which is the more you learn about him, the more you learn that he did so much more than you would think.
Chris?
It's certainly not surprising to hear more stories like this as you go on the path. He was a young guy, when he started the How to Live school. This isn't something that he's done in his 30s or 40s. He was already really involved and taking a leadership position from a young age. So even younger doesn't surprise me at all, because even in the autobiography, he talks about being aware in the womb, crying a lot when he was a baby because he couldn't communicate, he couldn't actually interact with people. He was very frustrated. So, these little stories and insights of what it must be like to be him, from a very young age, it's incredible. So, not surprised to hear it at all.
Great. So that concludes the element where I want to talk about Mukunda's childhood. Let's go on to the concept of death now. Death obviously is beautifully described in what happens after death in the resurrection of Sri Yukteswar in chapter 43. What are your best moments from that chapter in it? Just very quickly, Stewart.
Yeah, when I first read it, I was like gobsmacked, but pleased as well. But yeah, just this the whole astral world, and you start talking about Haranya Loka, that's where you can go when you're done with coming back to Earth. But then that other layer, the causal, again, but in terms of death, it just kind of made death seem like it's just not a big deal, really. It's just taking off a jacket.
Mike?
Yeah, it's a very beautiful description of the astral plane. It's one of the two, like the other section in the autobiography that touched me in a similar way was when he had his first samadhi experience. But he's basically, he has this astral plane, and especially that part of the astral plane where Sri Yukteswar tends to hang out, like Hiranya Loka, and it's incredibly beautiful, and it's a very different place than here. And then he tries to use human words to describe it, and he keeps going on and on of how people are, and everything about life trance, and they go to a tree, and the tree can give you mangoes or an apple, and everything is beautiful, and there's no deserts everywhere. The nature is flourishing, and they have parties, and they're all happy, and yeah, it's totally surreal. And every now and then, when I'm in the car and I'm driving and I have one of those moments, and I just turn on this chapter to listen to it, because it's very uplifting.
Nice. Chris?
Yeah, when I read this, I remember a penny dropped when I thought to myself, oh, this is maybe, the course of action. We are here on this physical plane where we can't manifest things, with thought quite yet, and when we go to the astral, things are manifested at a faster pace maybe, and we're here almost as a training ground, as a school. And it kind of made sense to me in a way. Things go at a slower pace until you learn how to behave, and you learn how to master yourself, and then you can evolve. So everything in its own time. Reading the Gita as well, seeing how we've gone through countless incarnations, it does allow oneself to sit back and think of a plan for your life to become realized, and to take these next steps towards, realizing the reality that Sri Yukteswar painted there.
Yeah, absolutely. My big takeaway was that at death, everyone would go for a very short duration to the astral world, and as Mike said, the astral world is this beautiful place, and there's obviously the causal world beyond that. But the astral world, there's two types of inhabitants of the astral world. There's ones which are in awareness of where they are, and there's ones which are just there as like a passing phase. They're due to come back, and that was very interesting for me, and answered a lot of questions for me inside. But on let's talk about the sorrow of death, because obviously Yogananda here is very sad, or sorry, Mukunda is very sad when he hears about his mother's death. But I want to take you into a curveball, and this is the favorite section of one of my favorite films, The Lion King. Listen to this.
You knew my father?
Correction, I know your father.
I hate to tell you this, but he died a long time ago.
Nope, wrong again. He's alive, and I'll show him to you. You follow old Rafiki, he knows the way. Come on. Don't dawdle. Hurry up!
Hey, whoa, wait.
Come on.
Would you slow down?
Stop! Look down there.
That's not my father. It's just my reflection.
No. Look hard. You see, he lives in you.
Father?
Simba, you have forgotten me.
No. How could I?
You have forgotten who you are, and so forgotten me. Look inside yourself, Simba. You are more than what you have become. You must take your place in the circle of life.
How can I go back? I'm not who I used to be.
Remember who you are. You are my son, and the one true king. Remember who you are.
No! Please! Don't leave me!
Remember.
Father!
Remember.
Don't leave me.
Remember.
What was that? The weather. Very peculiar, don't you think?
Yeah. Looks like the winds are changing.
Change is good.
Yeah, but it's not easy. I know what I have to do, but going back means I'll have to face my past. I've been running from it for so long. Ow! Jeez, what was that for?
It doesn't matter. It's in the past.
Yeah, but it still hurts.
Oh, yes, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it. Ah, you see? So what are you going to do?
First, I'm gonna take your stick.
No, not a stick. Hey, where are you going?
I'm going back!
Good! Go on! Get out of here!
Now that, I've seen The Lion King probably 5 times in the theater and many more times in just the cartoon version ever since I was a child. And there's these films, and sometimes people can't really connect, so don't know why things connect to them. But just in that scene, look how much philosophy there was, right? And that would filter down to a child, and without even knowing it, these things would influence your thinking. So there's so many analogies there with some of many of our teachings. Mike, what did you think of that video and in the concept of sorrow and death and just that concept really?
I also grew up on Lion King, so that was I think that I was 10 when this movie came out. So I watched this movie a lot, and this was one of the scenes that I found really encouraging because I grew up in this spiritual household in this non-spiritual world, and then a scene like this kind of made it's funny because when people see this, even if they're not spiritual, they see this and they look at this and think this is Guruji puts this somewhere in the autobiography. It's it's familiar, it's not understood. Nobody, people look at this and they have no idea what's going on a metaphysical level, but it seems familiar to them, and that's why they can connect with this. And no, there wasn't a big debate after Lion King movie. Oh, what is that scene all about? It was just intuitional wisdom that it just brought to the surface in a lot of people. And same thing with me. And there's so much hidden in there. There's obviously the death of his father that was painful to him. And in this movie, he even had the feeling that it was his fault, even though it wasn't. And then the whole idea of dealing with your past, right? Running away from your past. And I don't want to go too much into Lion King, but they had this whole Hakuna Matata concept. It's like no worries. And it's like basically not dealing with your past. You're just happy, but you don't do your inner work. You don't do your introspection. You don't analyze yourself. And that is very important on the spiritual path. That's kind of where the spiritual analogies end in Lion King for me. But it's very, very nice to have this so nicely woven into a very popular children's movie.
Stewart?
Yeah, it was interesting to watch because I remember watching that scene for a while, and when I did, I didn't take it in as well. But for me, watching there, the imagery was quite interesting because I had like his father's sort of silhouette in a blue swirl, like, and then there was like the golden moving around, like, so very much like spiritual eye.
Good observation. Wow.
I was like, oh, that's, and then just before, like, yeah, that's what I was like, that's quite amazing actually. And then just, yeah, his father speaking to him and saying, I'm sort of in you, like you can do this. So yeah, but for me, that was just the imagery that was the most potent.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Disney actually. They have this recurring theme throughout all or most of their movies, and it's been a while. I agree with Stuart. It's been a while since I've seen that, and I'm seeing it in a different light now. No pun intended. But yeah, I enjoy the beginning. It's all metaphor, isn't it? You know, that the idea of when he goes to search for or to follow to search for his father. He goes through the dark jungle, and he's getting entangled. He's tripping. He's falling. He's getting up again. You know, it's all a journey for life, isn't it? You're going to fail so many times. It reminded me there when I was watching it, like, and struck a feeling of gratefulness because, you know, how much do we fall in life, and you know, we have a guru that's going to be there with us no matter what, and we've engaged in this relationship with our guru, and you know, he's going to be there. So pick yourselves back up, you know, keep going. You know, that's a really strong lesson, even just from that small clip of a thing, you know. So yeah, you know, I'm going to watch the movie again. You've inspired me for it.
Yeah, the one thing that I really liked about that clip as well, that the father, they're using the physical, you know, the genetic father, but actually the father is, you know, beyond the heavenly father, and we know in the East we know that he lives in, you know, he is in us, isn't he? And we can become that divinity if we look inside. And he obviously lost his way, and that's most of our sadhana, is that work, isn't it, to find that heavenly father within us. Yeah, so I thought that's really, really powerful. And I think what happens in instances such as this is that the West borrows, you know, Disney borrows and uses Eastern knowledge and wisdom and philosophy because it's so profound, and they can't explain why it's profound. As Mike said, it's like that, you know, when you hear truth, you know, truth it strikes that chord, and then the viewers around the world will watch it, and it will just be in the back of their minds. I just thought it was absolutely beautiful. So yeah, thank you for allowing me that 3.5 minute segue, but I thought it was relevant. Let's talk about the next scene. So the next scene is his mother being, well, it's portraying his mother being taken to the funeral pyre or the cremation pyre. Let's talk about cremations versus burials. So no doubt his mother was cremated, but we will see that cremations aren't in Eastern philosophy, cremations aren't applicable for every single type of person who dies. So you may or may not know, but children, when children below a certain age, when they pass, they are not cremated, they are buried. And the reason for that is it's said that up to a certain age, children haven't took on any additional karma. They're still new. They're still, even though they may be growing and they may have developed likes and dislikes, but their soul is still very, very, new to this plane. So even though they may have baggage of karma, they haven't actually been influenced by anything yet. And hence, if their soul passes, if they have passed away for whatever reason, then we don't need to conduct that whole cremation ceremony, because the purpose of the cremation ceremony, or one of the purposes, is when we want the soul to move easily to the next, or to the astral world, without lingering. And if, for example, the body is here, then there's that kind of inclination for the soul to kind of not leave, and hence we do these things like cremation. We distribute clothes. There's various other things that Hindus do to make the passage of the soul to the astral much easier. And there's also other people that aren't cremated, as you will know. Our Guruji wasn't cremated. He was buried in what was the crematorium? What is the funeral ground, Mike?
It's called Forest Lawn. It's in LA.
Forest Lawn, yep. So spiritual masters, a lot of them aren't cremated. Obviously, they have no karma to burn or any to speak of. So cremation for them would be an unnecessary act. And indeed, actually, if you go to India, some of you may have seen that Samadhistans. So Samadhistan is a space where someone took samadhi or mahasamadhi. So that actually becomes kind of an energy center, and there's temples that are just dedicated to people where they took their mahasamadhi. So people will come there and meditate in that space, and there's temples just dedicated to that. So it's a very powerful space, and those people aren't cremated. They'll belong there. They'll be buried, and that space will be quite highly energetic and conducive to meditation. But obviously, we also bury people in other faiths. So yeah, I thought I'd talk a little bit about the difference between cremations and burials. Does anyone have any input into that dialogue that I just went off on?
Yeah, it surprised me to read recently that Germany, for example, has a lot more cremations than burials. But it being Germany, it's not a spiritual reason, but more practical reasons. No space on the cemeteries. Cremations are a bit more practical. It being Germany, of course, there's also a debate now about what is your CO2 footprint if you burn your body and stuff. But I found that interesting. I remember a monk telling me once, I think Guruji writes this as well somewhere, I was asking about the meaning of cremation, and he said that it makes it easier for your soul to pass on, because there might still be attachments to your body, and if your body turns to ash, then those attachments are gone.
Yeah.
And I that's why I think once I die, not if I die, once I die, I want to be cremated as well.
Chris?
When your body dies, yeah. I hadn't thought about cremation for many, many years until more recently. And I remember saying to my mum, I think, when I die, I'm going to get cremated. And she gave me this funny look, tilt my head to the side. Why on earth would you do? It's so unusual. Northern Ireland, you just don't do these kind of things, And it just gave me a funny, it was a funny moment where, even as something like that is flying in the face of tradition, therefore not accepted, and how we so easily fall into these stagnant ways of thinking and so on. And it just kind of, this conversation spurs that. Sort of that event just was my
Chris,
mind.
Chris, do you want to tell some of our listeners that may not be used to the reason for why we have burials in Christian and Islamic and Judaism? Why is that philosophically? Why do they have burials?
Yeah, to not come back to life. They've had enough of you in the end, or something like that.
I think,
you know what? I don't.
oh, you
it's a
don't know.
hospital
I
house,
think
I
I
don't
know. Chris, Stewart, do you know, or would you like me to explain?
No, I'm not 100%. Actually.
I think I do believe that there's the day of judgment. After that day, you actually rise again. So that body you will take up after the day of judgment, and hence the burial is important in those faiths. But Stuart, yeah, generally, let's talk about what were your takes on cremation. Any points that you'd like to raise?
I thought that was interesting what you said, Priyank, so thanks. I didn't know some of that, especially about cremation is good for the soul to just go, like forget the body. But yeah, I can't even remember what I used to think about myself. But now I would probably just rather be cremated, and just, this body wouldn't be taking up any space then. Also, if it helps you just forget it, then yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah, there's other things you have to do, like I've got this book on death, actually, according to Sadhguru, actually. And interestingly, I went to Sadhguru in his previous incarnation. He took Mahasamadhi and he had to come back. And where he took his Mahasamadhi in his previous incarnation, he was this very fiery person. His name was Sadhguru Sri Brahma. And I went to where he took Mahasamadhi. It was like in the mountains on a cliff edge. And you hike for like 8 hours and you get to there, and all noise, there's just cloud. It's like this really mystical place, and you just sit and it's just complete stillness. There's like no noise, and it's just a really eerie, spooky place. And yeah, so that spot has become a place of pilgrimage for many people. Yeah, it's called Sadhguru's Seventh Hill, I think it's called. Yes.
Is that in Gujarat?
No, it's in South India, right next to his ashram in Coimbatore.
Ah, right.
Yes.
In like Guruji famously did his Mahasamadhi in the Biltmore Hotel, and during convocation, the Biltmore Hotel doesn't like it, but there's always people sitting in the lobby meditating there. And they started more recently. They started putting up a picture of his last smile there, and then you always see people sitting somewhere meditating in the area. There's like 4 chairs and good place to. I hope one day this will become some kind of shrine.
Yeah, I was thinking about that just yesterday, actually. Wouldn't it be fantastic if SRF bought that hotel, not for the purpose of running a business, but actually creating a temple in that space? I think it would be one of the most visited SRF UIs places in the world. It
is already a landmark. It would totally, if you turned this into a temple, I would find that fantastic.
We should get SRF or Ananda to do it.
Yeah, someone needs to buy it first.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the next section now. So Yogananda talks about his beloved mother, and the cosmic mother, actually, in the same breath. So let's talk about cosmic mother or divine mother. Why is she revered so famously across faiths? Well, many different faiths, do you guys think? Mike?
So I think it's a bit different in the East than in the West. In Christianity, there's like the figures of his physical father and mother that play a role in Christianity. But on the metaphysical level, there is definitely that thing that, like, you have the father figure, the heavenly father, and the divine mother on some level, and they have different aspects of God. Like the father is more like the strong authoritarian, and the mother is more like the caring, loving aspect. And that's a very endearing, very sought after aspect of God, right? the part that you can just go to when something bad happens to you, where you feel that is like you sometimes you don't want to go to the court of judgment or something. Sometimes you just want to talk to God and tell him about your day and tell him and ask for a loving response. And I feel like this is the personification of the Divine Mother, and I feel like a lot of people, they seek that.
Yeah, the I remember when I first came to the UK and I went to a Catholic church, and I saw they very heavily emphasized the worship of Virgin Mary as a divine mother, almost in parallel or on par with Christ and Heavenly Father. And I remember the personifications that I saw, or, the paintings and the statues. I'd seen many impressions of Divine Mother in Indian, Mother Goddess temples, and I thought, oh, there's just another Hindu temple where Goddess Divine Mother is being worshipped. And then when I spoke to some Catholics when in my later years, and there was no difference. The way they described Divine Mother, I thought, oh, that's just completely universal. That applies for Hindus as well as you guys. Chris?
Yeah, I've got a similar experience, I suppose, to some degree on the Catholic side and the Christian side. The faith I grew up in Northern Ireland, knowing, compare and contrast in school. That's what we did, and for better or for worse. But the Cosmic Mother never really came into it. I have to say, never really came into the language. The idea about having, a mother goddess kind of figure. Although yes, in the Catholic faith they would have their female figures, but not so much in Protestant faith and so on. To my understanding, anyway, to my limited experience, but it's a natural balancing, isn't it? The feminine energy within us, the masculine energy has a balance, and it has to be balanced on Earth, really. So, Cosmic Mother having a feminine personified figure is something that naturally I think humans need, and it's a stepping stone towards going beyond that and seeing everything as one and unified. So necessary step forward, but different in all parts of the world. So
yeah, Stewart, any reflections?
Yeah, well, interestingly, I teach in a Catholic school on a Monday, and because of COVID, we need to be putting rooms at windows and things. And I've ended up being in the prayer room for quite a while. And there's a big statue of the Virgin Mary. And I remember the first time I just looked and I was like, oh yeah, that's Divine Mother. And yeah, I guess it's just relatable. Like most people, they've got a relationship with their mother, or if they didn't have a mother, then if they can have a Divine Mother. And one thing that struck me when I first read in the lessons was the Divine Mother. You can sort of ask more, like it's like you would your own mother, but Mum, please, but I've done this, I'm sorry, but it's just that sort of, like when Guruji managed to spiritualize, so to speak, his sister's husband after praying for hours to Divine Mother, and that was who he was praying to. Yeah.
Yep. So there's the birth mother as a representative and a portion of the Cosmic Mother. That Yogananda really plays with that in this minute. Do you want to read that card where we've put another story from Mejda about that?
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I can indeed in Mejda, Sananda Ghosh.
Yes, go on. Have you got it, or shall I read it?
I have it, yeah.
Yep, go for it.
So in Mejda, Sananda Ghosh says that he and Mukunda once asked Master Mahasaya to summon their mother from the astral plane. He refused at first, but eventually acquiesced. The brothers sat behind the guru for 2 full hours as he meditated. Then he bid them to turn around and behold the figure in the doorway. It was, of course, their beloved Amma. Do you want to jump in there, Frank?
No, go for it. Carry on.
They asked if she remembered them. She said she watches over them at all times and that they are under Divine Mother's protection. Then she was gone. When the boys told their father what had happened, he admonished them, not because he thought that they made up a tall tale, but out of compassion for his departed wife. He did not want her soul to be troubled by demands from the earthly plane.
Reflections, Chris?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm young, relatively. I haven't experienced too many occasions of death in the family, but when it has happened, I remember praying when my granny died. I remember praying really to her and asking for guidance and so on. And I did feel a presence with her, and I kind of thought to myself, wait, am I bothering her? Like I don't know what she's up to on the other side of the veil, you know. And I was quite young thinking this. And so I can kind of empathize with this story. Actually, I haven't thought about this memory. It hasn't occurred to me in many years. And it's made me think of other deaths in the family where the family really grieve and for years and years and years. And now knowing what I know through Yogananda and the teachings, you've got to let people go. You've got to let them go really to move on and allow them not to be anchored. And so this really makes a lot of sense reading this back and seeing the pitfalls that we go through as civilization in anchoring each other to the gross plane of physical existence. It's funny, you got to laugh really at the end of the day. So I can, it's triggering lots of memories actually in my life and realizations. And I actually have always had a bit of a sick attitude towards death, which is almost like a joyful experience, almost I would say. And you've got to be really careful about how you perceive death when you're with other people, because I would see it almost as a liberation, you know, almost as an opportunity to go from this life into the next, if you've done the work in this life, you know, spiritually to ascend and to do things. So it's triggering lots of things when I read that passage. So thanks for sharing that.
Very nice. Stewart, any reflections?
Yeah, I haven't really experienced anyone in my family or close dying since being on the spiritual path. It was all before. And at the time, like my grandparents died and I was very upset. And interestingly, I had a cat that died suddenly and I was very upset about this. The most upset I'd ever been about anything was over this cat. And then now that seems so ridiculous. But I was really, really upset for a long time. Not like months, like a week or two. But I was sobbing over this cat. But yeah, now I would think I would feel like that because I'd think, well, they're going on, they're evolving. Obviously, their current karmic predicament, that was no longer any use. So leave them alone, remember them fondly, but don't wish them back. Yeah, but then in terms of my own departure, I would I'm not worried about it, but I don't want to go because I'm like, well, I want to keep practicing, I want to get more evolved. So I don't want to be born again and be a wee baby that doesn't know what's going on. It's a bit of a, yeah.
Mike?
I can relate to the story with the cat. Like our dog of 14 years just passed away a few weeks ago, and that wasn't easy. And like my sister, I don't know, she tortures me. She keeps sending me pictures of him and stuff like that. Like, because it is painful because he was a very loving dog, and then that's what you remember. You remember all the love that was given, right? And And it's the same with your relatives if they pass away. This whole perspective that they're moving to the astral plane, that it's actually good for them, and that leaves you with your attachment being a bit selfish. And yeah, but it's normal. Like Guruji talks a lot about how the loss of his mother hit him hard, and it is a very human thing. So I think it is normal, and eventually we need to let go.
Yeah,
I can triple that story with the cat story. I had a cat that passed when I was a kid, and I remember crying. What's it all about? Why did it have to die so young? But Yogananda had a similar animal story, right, in the autobiography of a yogi, and it is just this very thing where he was willing this deer, I think it was, to live in his school, right, and the spirit came to him and said, you have to let me go, I have to be let go. But very, very interesting, the willpower, and what can that do? We're children of God, and we have influence over this world, and we must be careful with how we interact and tread lightly.
Yep, very true. The final line of the scene is so Divine Mother almost saying, farewell, cosmic mother will protect you, or his birth mother kind of saying that through his intuition. So cosmic mother, I'll just talk a little bit about that in Yogananda's teachings. So there's spirit and nature. So we know that cosmic chant, Radha 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 Govinda Jai, spirit and nature dancing together. So there's spirit is Radha. So every Hindu, well, most of the Hindu gods have a feminine consort. So Shiva has Parvati, Ram has Sita, Krishna has Radha. So spirit is the personification of nature. So for example, when there's a creator and then there's the creation. So as the creator creates, that is the energy, the spirit, and that is manifest in creation as cosmic energy, and that is how we say Divine Mother. So that is that's how creation is referred to as Divine Mother in Hindu philosophy, as it were. So yeah, that's that. That's pretty much the end of the minute. Does anyone have any further points that they'd like to say? Mike?
Yeah, I again, this like loss of his own mother. I find people, when it happens to them, especially at an early age, it is a bit traumatizing to them. And I really like the scene that you put out in Lion King as well, because what Simba did was holding on to the trauma and not working through it. And I feel like Guruji put this in there to show people that this is a real thing, this happens to him. But then also he kind of tries to show the wisdom how to let go of it. And I think that's a key point in some people's lives.
Chris?
We talked in previous minutes, and even had Mas Vidal on the show, and we talked about moments of strain and heartache and things that might actually result in, let's say, the shaking of our foundations to propel us into higher practices and desires for knowing God. And this is really the continuation of that. Just to go back to that, I know we've talked about it a few times now, and these are blessings. These heartaches and troubles that we have, and maybe you look back in a few years' time and realize, gosh, I really grew from that experience. There were a few things actually, just to pay homage to Yogananda's mum that I read in the autobiography of a yogi that I wanted to say, and her influence over him. And it was really about how it was noted in the autobiography that one of the earlier happier memories of Yogananda when he was at a very young age, that he was very conscious from a young age and being self-aware of his body limitations, as I mentioned earlier on, his inability to express himself led to many bouts of crying. But it was really the mother that was there to caress him, to reassure him, and provide that loving care and attention. And she also introduced him to the first scripture reading of is it Mahabharata and Ramayana. And interestingly, that was a subject on discipline. And he would go on to have, his guru was, Sri Yukteswar, who really taught him more discipline. And then really finally, she was noted as the Queen of Hearts, and she spent a lot of time feeding the poor and doing things. And there was a story here about how she took a month of her husband's, Yogananda's father's wage, a month of the wage, and used it to feed the poor. So great role models, great influence on Yogananda's upbringing. He obviously chose well as to have a birth mother of this ilk, and really she was meditating with him. Many mornings it would be fun meditating together. So just lovely little stories that Yogananda really took the time to pay homage to his mother in these ways, to show her in a great light. So yeah,
beautiful. Thank you for sharing those reflections, Stewart.
Yeah, the main thing I took from that episode in his life was when the Divine Mother says, "I've been your mother through all your mothers." And then I really thought about that for myself, looking at my own mother and thinking back to, and then in everything, just like Divine Mother's in the trees and the food, everything, you can go a walk in nature and just stand still and feel. So yeah, that struck me. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Stewart. And that concludes our minute. So Stewart, thank you so much for having us. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And you can hopefully join us again. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you next time. Jai Guru, everyone. Take care.
Guru.
Bye.